evening. It is Thursday evening, the final Thursday of May. There's no maybe about that. Today is the 30th day of May. And it's Thursday, therefore it's time for Mek We Chat, the rambunctious evening where we look at the news, we tell you what we think is important, we invite your comment, and boy, oh boy, do we have a rollicking time. I'm Jerry George, your host, and it's my pleasure to welcome on board this evening out of New York, Margaret Francis, in Grenada, Bev Sinclair, in London, Catherine, and George Francis Norman at the controls.
What?
Thanks for
George who?
joining us. George Grant.
Hey,
What?
Mags, I didn't
George
know we
Grant.
got married, girl.
George Francis.
You
This is not
understand?
the first time, you know. I don't know.
Well, boy, I've been trying to figure out a way to pose
I
the
used to
question
work
for a
with one.
long
That is
time.
why it just comes naturally, you see. That's the problem.
Jeez.
No matter. No
Easy.
matter.
You want confusion. You like chili, so it's okay. But at this point, let me hand it over to our producer, Bev Sinclair, to find out what she thought. All things are the important things that we should perhaps look at tonight. But as usual, you know, we could wonder, but never leave you without
But
Can you
never
see
leave
without
you
what?
wondering.
right
You
wondering.
wonder, but we never leave you wondering. That's right. Good evening, folks. Oh boy, this is my favorite place, you know, right here in this chat room. Thursday evenings, 8 o'clock, happiest place on radio. You know, I think George has a guest on his morning shows, Good Day, Grenada, on a Thursday morning. And I think they're trying to have as much fun as we do here on a
Never
Thursday,
happened. Impossible.
you know? But no way we're going to let that happen, you see? No way.
Not at all. Not at all.
This is it. Happiest place on radio. So this evening we have a very, very, very full menu. And I sneak something else in on it, you know. Not a soul in this room, no, but me.
Oh, you did.
Yes, I did.
I'd like to guess.
Guess, no?
I'd like to get the breaking news.
Guess.
Continue, not me. Not me. Never not me.
It's a
Neighbor
topic
Margaret killed me.
that has been making the rounds in Grenada for quite a few years. And it's back at the top of the, what you would call it, the public banter, the public chatter. Again,
Health. You mean
and
health?
it's national health insurance.
Yes, right.
Oh,
That is.
yes.
Yes.
But
I snuck that one in there very late. So let us see what we will say about the health insurance this evening. But as Jerry mentioned, that it's the 30th of May. We kind of thought May was over long time. But it seems we still
you mean Theresa May?
we still have a couple of days left, today and tomorrow, in the month of May, even though, you know, May is over. And when May goes, we know what comes, the hurricane season. So we
Very much
have
so.
that on our menu to touch on the hurricane season. Preparedness, what do you see happening? So we're going to look at that. We're also going to look at Canadian banks leaving Antigua. And we want to look at the threat, the looming threat that visa-free access to Europe is going to be taken away from, I will say, Eastern Caribbean countries, because they're not going to take it from one and not the others. But St. Kitts is the one in the spotlight right now to lose visa-free access to Europe. So that is what we will highlight for now. And as the evening wears on, we will see what else we get to. But we're going to start again with condolences to the family of the late Edward Philip George Thiago, a former Prime Minister of Jamaica. He was the Prime Minister of Jamaica in the 80s, from 1980 to 89, I believe, a pivotal moment in the history of Jamaica's politics. He was there I refer to him as the Revolution Prime Minister, because he was the Prime Minister at the time when the revolution was ruling in Grenada, and he was a persona non grata for the revolution, you know. They said he was a CIA spy. And in Jamaica, he did a lot of fear mongering about the whole socialist leftist movement, you know, to panic Jamaica into thinking that socialism was the worst thing that we could ever hear of. And that is how he came to be so popular during that era. He took over as Prime Minister from Michael Manley. And Michael Manley was definitely a socialist. He made no bones about that. And Edward Seaga used that to tell the people of Jamaica that, you know, because of Manley's socialist ways, what has happened in Grenada could very much happen in Jamaica. That was the kind of fear mongering that was going on in Jamaica at the time. To the extent where in 1983, when he was Prime Minister, after the implosion of the revolution, Mr. Seaga called a snap election. He was just 3 years into his term. He called a snap election, you know, whipped up a lot of excitement and fear mongering, as I said, and no, we're going to have a snap election. Well, the opposition didn't bother with him. They boycotted. Yeah, you know, and he had his election, served for another 5 years, 83 and 88, and right up to about 89 when he limited office. But one of the really notable things in Jamaican politics is that a prime minister will leave office in the middle of his term. So there is hardly a prime minister in Jamaica that didn't demit office in the middle of the term.
That's to give the other prime minister, the incoming,
so that the incoming person can wet their feet, have their own election, and get their own mandate from the people. So that was what happened. But Edward Seaga, he was certainly quite a character. He will be remembered not just as Prime Minister of Jamaica, but he's going to be remembered for many other things. You know, he was quite a character. He will be missed. He will definitely be missed, and I know there will be...
Well, Bev, one of the things you said that Jamaica's never seemed to be very sure of his origins.
Jamaicans made up all kind of stories about Mr. Seaga's place of birth. When they want to taunt him that he was...
So it's not just Obama then?
Oh gosh, because he proceeded
right.
further. Yeah, when they wanted to irritate him, because it's one of the things that really got under his skin when people tried to say he's not a Jamaican. As a matter of fact, in one of the election campaigns, that was a big thing. I think it was the 79 campaign when there was actually a song. My father Barnia, my grandfather Barnia, I and I Anya. You know, and I wanted to let Mr. Edward Seaga know that you don't have no roots here. You know, there are people who say he was born on a plane, some say he come from Syria. There are all kind of stories to make up about the man and his origin. But until the day he died, Edward Philip George Seaga identified as a Jamaican and nothing else. No, and he was really a grassroots kind of person, you know. He got down there in the trenches and just became one of the regular Joes, although he could never be regular because of the kind of person that he was. Really, really quite a colorful figure on Jamaica's political scene. He did write at least a couple of books, could be more. And I think it would be good for those who like history, who are interested in history, and those who should be teaching history to ensure that they read those books. Because one of them is dedicated to the revolution in Grenada. So it will,
Really? Okay.
it will make interesting.
Well, I see PJ is going to be launching one tomorrow.
Yeah, yes, I see that too. And it's good for these people who have served as prime ministers to write books. I was very excited when I heard that Dr. Mitchell was launching a book here, only to discover that it was a compilation of his speeches, which to me made no sense. You need to write about what your experiences, your contribution, the different impact that your administration has made, or you as an individual, how being in politics has affected your personal life, your family life, what it has done for you, what you have done for the country, the changes you've seen on the world scene, the changes you have contributed to. Write something meaningful. A whole pile of speeches, and most of them you didn't even write them himself. So why are you taking them to pub? That's the best you can do after 50 years in politics.
No, but seriously though,
go and write a good book.
Seriously though, across the region, the whole question of book writing, I somehow think it's misunderstood what is expected. And therefore, that is probably why the Prime Minister has chosen the easiest route out, just simply to publish his speeches. It is something that as a people we really are feeling at it. But
yeah, because
people write too many of these publications for vanity purposes. We don't want vanity. We want something that really leaves something on the ground.
Substance. We need
exactly.
Substance. 50 years from now or 100 years from now, when someone picks up that book with this whole compilation of speech, how do you connect the dots? And
let me tell you something else on that story. Yeah, is this that we have this thing that we keep saying that books are out of style. Listen, the amount of books that's being written.
That's so not true.
I went into this bookstore 100. What is it called? 100 books or whatever it is. There is when you pass to the airport, there are so many books there. But in the Caribbean, we have this concept that books. If somebody see you reading a book, they call you old-fashioned. I've been called that several times.
Those who don't read.
Yeah, seriously.
Those who don't read books try to push this thing that people don't read. I don't stop buying books. I do not stop buying books. I'm always picking up books wherever I go.
My case was too heavy, and I keep saying to myself, boy, why you keep doing this to yourself?
Why are you buying books?
One of my favorite places
to browse. I like books.
That's sweet.
No. I like to kick back with a book. I'm sorry.
I could read all this
stuff. I could read my Kindle stuff, but there's a certain thing about a book I like. In that regard, I'm old-fashioned. Okay, I accept it. Lord,
I like books too, because when I read my books, I like to make notes.
I mark them up, yeah.
You can do the same on digital books.
I know. It's not as simple.
But it's not the same. It's not the same. With a digital book, and I have digital books. I read digital books. But with a digital book, you can't browse 2 pages at the same time because you have to keep scrolling back and forth. So if I want to connect points, because I'll put in my highlights, I'll put in my page markers, and you want to be looking at something on 3 or 4 pages at a time. For me, it's more convenient to have a book in my hand. I can turn here, I can turn there, I can go forward, I can go back. You can do it on the Kindle too, but it's not so.
Listen,
I one of those who mark up books, right?
Yes,
yeah, you should see my books. I mark up my books.
Test people who do that. Why do they do that?
When I read with a highlighter somewhere close by.
Exactly.
It's getting marked.
I always have a highlighter handy.
It's getting marked. That is why I like my book. When I kick back, I want a book in my hand.
And the other thing for me with the book is that I can sometimes remember exactly where in the book I saw something. When I read the ebooks, I remember I read it, but even if I highlight it, put a bookmark on it or anything, it's not so easy to go back and find it. You know?
But the key thing
that's me.
The key thing in all of this, though, is to get past the point that this concept that people not reading the books are old-fashioned and stuff is really outdated.
But this is the first time anyway. Yeah.
In the Caribbean, I'm telling you. In the Caribbean,
but that's
people consider books almost old. You understand?
But is that true everywhere? Because it was my experience certainly when I was growing up that reading was more common in some islands than others. You know, so is that true across the board, or
Well,
is it?
I know for sure. Okay, reading had a lot to do with the countries that had more newspapers. So,
Right.
for example, in Barbados, we had a daily newspaper. People's reading and expectation and reading habits were completely different than the rest of the region.
Right, because you see, like when as a kid in Trinidad, there were just so many newspapers around. I
Exactly.
remember there was a morning paper, so you had the morning papers, and then in the evening you had
Right.
the evening news. So people would get their papers in the morning, and then when they're coming home from work, they'll get the evening news. You
That
had to
was the
come home with the
British.
evening
That's
news.
exactly the way the
So you
British
know,
was.
and then on Sundays you went out, you got the Sunday papers, which was thicker.
Which is
So
a
you had
massive
like
paper.
yes. So you would get the Guardian on Sunday mornings, the Express on Sunday mornings as well. And I mean, people just read. I mean, you would pass and see people just standing. They're waiting for the bus, and they're standing lining, and they're standing with their papers in their hand reading. You know, so that's the reason
So
why I said I
in those
know.
two countries, particularly, I know for a fact that there's that culture. The rest of the islands, where you had a weekly newspaper in most places, you had libraries that really were never properly refreshed.
Right,
That's where that comes from.
right.
You know,
Right. But reading is not dying
at all.
anytime soon.
No,
No.
yeah, I don't. Yeah, I
But
don't think it is.
we do need to encourage, especially this younger generation that really do not do English literature in school or history in school or
What
those
you say they're not doing literature in school? No, Beth. Please tell me
or
no.
those
Don't tell me.
or
You
those
think it's
kinds
joke?
of or
Are
those
you
kinds of
serious?
topics, those
They're
kinds of
not doing
subjects.
literature?
But
They're doing literature,
it's
but I
diminishing.
find
Not that it's not
diminishing,
an offered
right?
subject,
Yes, but
it's
in
not a
terms of the real
subject.
classics and stuff, I can't tell when last I hear a student talk about one of the classical research stuff.
Exactly so.
I'm not saying that you shouldn't do other stuff, but I feel that you just need to get a handle of the classics.
Yeah.
Yeah, but are you
last-
saying that? No. So what makes one thing superior to another? Because inherent in that is the classics. And who determined what was classic?
No, but it's
You
not
stop
a
to think
matter
about
Whether we
that?
like it or not,
Listen.
that's the world standard in terms of the
That's
classics.
not no
listen.
world standard.
The classics
That
are
is
the books.
just because somebody sit and decide
Margaret,
that is classic and that is it.
Margaret.
It's what?
Margaret, for the purpose of literature, the classics are books which are written long time, not in the
Exactly.
old book. Right. So if you're looking at a book which was written maybe 100 years ago or something like that, usually these are brought forward and used in schools as texts. So you refer Shakespeare. Most of us who did English literature in school in my era, we did Shakespeare. And which school today is using Shakespeare as a text in literature?
But
Is
why?
it not
So
because
what?
we don't use any more O levels? I think because we had O level system that time.
Exactly.
Now,
it forced you
now
to
it's
use a
different.
foreign
And listen,
That is
foreign
why.
thing
Margaret,
and just
That
did
is
your
why.
own.
Margaret.
The Cambridge exams. The
Easy.
English system.
Take it easy. I'm not saying they have to use it. We're just talking about what is the classics.
Yes. So, Margaret, let me ask you:
We're not
when you
saying
talk
what?
about classical music, what is classical music to you?
Exactly.
No, listen. I see it. Okay, it's a particular genre that sounds a certain way. It doesn't mean that somebody from the Caribbean or somebody from Africa cannot produce a piece that falls within that construct and that it's not a classical piece. But to tell me that it has to be produced
But
in
is it
Europe by
so
somebody
recognized?
European.
Nobody mentioned the word
I don't
European.
think you
Not a
suggested
single
that.
No,
soul
but
mentioned the word European. So don't go there.
No, I don't.
Because that's why I'm asking the question. When you talk about classical music as a world construct, what is classical music? You see, sometimes we just want to ignore some facts. The fact is, classical music has a particular genre, but it also has a particular period and type and stuff that goes with it. It's just like it's architecture. There are some buildings that are classical architecture.
And let's get
It's
back
just
to
a fact of life.
let's
Let's
get
go back.
back to books. Let's get back to books. Because we used to study under the British system before we came in with CXC. And the books that were available at that time are those books. It's just in more recent times you have Caribbean authors who have written books that I believe a lot of these books should be adopted in our schools, not just for literature, but also for history. You know, you have books written by people like Alkins Douglas.
And his stuff should be in every school as far as I'm
Those
concerned.
are things that should be used in our schools.
Blasphemy.
So now that, you know,
Margaret, you didn't
yes,
drink.
yes, Nepal and those people, the Caribbean books that give you, that can be contextualized with history.
I don't disagree with you, but I'm just,
Hold on.
I'm speaking for you. You know whose head's gonna be rising. What?
No, that is
please.
fine. That is fine.
Yeah.
But okay, take C.S. Naipaul, for
The people
example.
who holding back the region.
Where was C.I. Paul? C.S. Naipaul based? Where did he grow up?
Who, Naipaul? Naipaul is Trinidadian. And then
He's Trinidadian, but where did he
He's
spend?
from Trinidad.
Most of his writing he did in England.
He did in England, yes, but Naipaul
you
is
see
a
what I'm
complex
saying?
figure, and
He's
certainly
too
has
complex
a
in his
has a
writing,
certain
really too
amount of
complex.
self-hate, and that's a whole Naipaul is a whole discussion in another book. So we're not even going to go
but his
there.
work is definitely complex.
And what is happening here is exactly why you could make a good literature book, because it stimulates discussion when you get into who he was, where he did his stuff, and the stuff he actually wrote about. So we should be looking for our Caribbean authors.
Listen, I think we learned from the classics is not so much is not so much the Shakespeare or the Chaucer thing, but it's how the classical structures are. What is, you could take that out of Shakespeare, and you could look for it in a Caribbean piece of writing. Because even though we have Caribbean writers, in terms of the analysis of their writing, how much of that is there? But I could pick up a book that has analyzed Great Expectations.
But Jerry, that's unfair. I mean, you can't. I mean, that is one form of writing, you know, and that's
agree.
all well and good, right?
No,
but I mean,
but we're talking about teaching now,
that and say, well, that is the basis for which everything else should be based.
But that is how the world has worked. Everything else has a
Jerry,
basis.
because the world has worked that way because something has been a certain way all the time doesn't mean that is the way or the only way.
Oh, listen,
the world is a big place with
listen.
multicultural people with different ways of seeing things. We have to learn to change the center.
Yeah, but you can't change. The best way to learn is to start from where you are, from the known to the unknown. You don't learn by just throwing yourself out there. You go from the known to the unknown.
But listen, you can't say, but then what you're basically saying by saying in this particular case is saying that those people knew, but anybody else from anywhere else
I did not
know.
say they knew. I said they have
because you're saying you're starting from the known.
Listen, from the known. We're talking about how literature is structured from the known. So I can go back, I can pull up any piece of Chaucer, I can pull up any piece of Shakespeare and tell you what this particular area means. I can tell you that because it is something that has been written down, the interpretation and stuff like that. I can't do that the same for Caribbean books. I'm not saying it's not there, but nobody has made that analysis.
How many Caribbean authors have you read?
But that's the point I'm making. But nobody has made that similar kind of analysis. That's the point I'm making.
But people have, and they have done it.
Where the books are?
Listen.
Where the books that do that are? In the schools, where are they?
Oh, you mean in the schools now?
Yes,
but I'm saying, but I mean, no, I thought you were talking in general, because I mean.
No, we're talking about how we teach this thing.
Oh, okay.
Because we could take a C.S. Naipaul, we could take a piece of prose out of C.S. V.S. Naipaul. We could take a piece of prose out of it, right? Where do we go for the interpretation, for the literary interpretation and construct of that? Where do we go?
No, but when we studied literature in school, we did that in school.
Yes,
exactly.
We took books and we didn't have a text to refer to for analysis.
And you do the symbolism and everything else is there.
Yeah, but where did that come from?
Hold on, Jerry. I don't know about your literature classes, but in my literature classes in school, we never had a text that we read which gave you an analysis of the book. We read the book And then in class, we analyzed it ourselves. We took out proses, we took out phrases, we took out sentences, we took out chapters, and we tried to make sense of how the book was written, why it was written, where it was written. We did that. Maybe what should have been happening is that these analyses should have been documented.
But that's my point.
Analyze, but I don't know.
That's my point. That's exactly the point I'm making.
You see, right? No, it didn't sound like that's the point.
Well, I'm telling you that's the point I'm making.
Okay, well, that is my point. And to close off on this, which was not on the menu,
that's okay.
English literature and history are two topics which CXC do not pay much attention to. Students do not gravitate toward them.
Well, they tell us that there are fewer people doing history anyway.
Exactly, but it's not something.
And it's sad that for both history for obvious reasons, and literature again for obvious reasons, regardless of where it is, because if you want to talk about building critical thinking skills, there's nothing that does that better than literature at the end of the day.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I can
Absolutely.
I can still remember one of my very early literature classes. I can't remember the book, but one of the phrases we pulled out of the book was, Mr. Burns, Mr. Something had sunburn on the top of his head. And the question was, well, let's use Mr. George since he's bald. Why did Mr. George have sunburn?
Yeah, George Grant. Yeah.
No, that is Mr. Grant. You are Mr. George.
George, exactly.
Yes. So we got the question like, why did Mr. George have sunburn on the top of his head? And we had a roaring discussion in the class that day about all the reasons he had sunburn on his head. And the reason was because he was bald. The end of it, afterwards,
It made it obvious to go a whole class.
So, and
a whole class.
That's why I remembered it as Margaret talked about critical thinking. Literature helps you to think, you know, it's like,
there's critical thinking. There's social issues. I mean, you know, I remember, I remember Mr. Batiste very well because he was just such a brilliant English teacher. We had him in Form 5. I mean, big debates over Shakespeare in that class, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, big debates, not simply about, but about the social, you know, the social
economic
values and stuff in
environment,
the society, you know, the beliefs, you know, where women, I mean, big thing about, you know, the treatment of women at that point in time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and big arguments in the past, you know, people pull sides and all that.
Listen, and here is what was the disconnect between the books that we had to use in literature classes. We could not relate to a lot of the things that were in the books because something like that, a bald man with sunburn on top of his head. We were young students at the time. In the Caribbean, you don't see bald-head men
with sunburn.
You don't see bald-head men with sunburn. I don't know why.
No, if you add that part, but you can't say those. No.
We do not. No, as a young child, where are you gonna see bald-head men?
Afro.
When you were 12 and 13, you seen any bald men? Your father would not have been young at that time. It would probably not have been bald then. You don't notice. Well, I can talk.
You don't notice.
As a young child, at the age of 12, 13, 14, I'm not noticing no bald men. Who see them?
Exactly.
You know,
I wonder when you start to notice.
I still don't. I still don't. You see what? That was a kind of disconnect. And sometimes when you read some books, when they talk about, you know, snowstorms and things like that, there was always this disconnect sometimes with the material in the book and the fact that you had to use the book. And that is why I believe our Caribbean books are written about things we can relate to. Sapodilla tree, under the mango tree, Brother Nancy, all of those things that we can relate to.
So let me see, who did I do in high school as Caribbean authors? So I did Michael Anthony, a year in San Fernando. I did Big Dog Bitterroot. There's a Jamaican author. Can't remember his name.
Mm-mm.
And I'm trying to think. I think those were the only two that I remember doing from the Caribbean. in high school.
I remember doing.
Because, you know, the books rotated every year. So some people some people did Naipaul. I did not do Naipaul.
Was.
Yeah, I didn't do anything by Naipaul. I had Michael Anthony and that guy from Jamaica, and I just don't remember his name, but I do remember the book, Big Dog Bitterroot.
I can't remember. And I did The Children of Sisyphus. And it took me a long time to understand that book, but I did it. You know, I did Animal Farm.
Animal Farm, man.
Yeah.
Okay, guys.
And that book is so topical today, it is not funny.
Oh, gosh.
It's relevant.
Yeah. You know,
that
guys.
That everybody should read.
Serious.
Since we're on this topic, George, there's a comment there from T.F. Richards. And I'm going to read it because I want to hear what you guys are going to say.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, from TF. So TF says, I agree that CXC doesn't pay much attention to history and literature, but being realistic, in the business world, it pays basically nothing in the wide scale to have these two subjects. And as such, I think that the students now are not even interested in these, except a scant few. Okay, Jerry.
No. That is, you see, listen, and we said it earlier, it's this whole ability to have a holistic view and stuff. Innovation does not just business and stuff. Innovation comes from outside of the norm. And if you cannot put your brain to think outside of the norm, in fact, innovation has a lot to do with what historically was, where people challenge what historically was. So if you don't know what it was, how are you innovating? You understand what I'm saying? So for a holistic mind development, you must do these things. This business that, it doesn't fit in the world of business. What does business mean? Because in the Caribbean, most of business is distributive trade. So what does business mean? You get my point?
You know, I want to add to what Jerry was saying there to TF. I think one of the problems that we fail to realize or we fail to get kids to understand is how everything is connected.
Fits. Absolutely.
One way or another. And sometimes something you see as not being important turns out to be so important. And I remember that first hit me when I was an undergrad. And as part of my core courses, I had to do physics. And I'm sitting around thinking, I'm a communication arts major. Why I had to do this, you know? And, you know, you complain about everything. You know, when you begin to understand why you need to do physics, because when you get into television production, you will understand why all the colors in the spectrum make white and why you use white to balance your camera and not pink or blue or green or something else. And why when you go to buy a television, for example, knowing how much dots there are makes a difference in terms of the type of picture you will get. Now, I'm a communication arts major. Why is physics important? It is important to help me to understand how these things work.
That's right. You see, when we say about business, my thing is what business is also innovation. I just finished, and I finished reading it. I'm reading the book Outliers by, what's his face there? And it's amazing how he has pulled all of these things that a lot of people just take for granted and kind of just throw them by the side of the road. And then he puts them together and you say, aha, you understand? So we need to understand history and we need to understand even the whole question of literature, how things fit together. It's very important for communication. I remember once I was teaching IT at, for the, what do you call it again? The UE classes outside off campus. And one of the things that they were saying was that,
the open campus?
Open campus, yeah. What they were saying is that, you shouldn't mark grammar. That I'm telling you, that when I mark people down for their grammar, we used to complain and say, but this is an IT course. Why are you marking me down? I said, because communication is part of whatever you do. And if I can't understand what you write in there, right? You could have the best concepts of the IT. I'm sorry. And I used to mark them down. They complain and all the rest of it. Eventually, you themselves recognize that a lot of the students were feeling that way because when they came to other subjects other than, say, the regular English type subject, you should see some of the atrocious things that came in front of you. And if you're not an English purist, right? It just occurs. So I'm sorry, you're getting marked down for that
Well,
too.
it's 8:35, guys. We are going to take a break. And we will not speak anymore this evening about English and literature.
Grenadian General Insurance Company, strength and stability. Grenadian General Insurance Company, tell your friends, tell your family. We cover householders comprehensive, motor and even fire too. Contractors all risk burglary, public liability, professional indemnity, directors liability, and wait, we still have more. Come and find out more what you're waiting for.
We are located on Scott Street, St. George's. For more information, call 440-2434.
Tell everybody.
Boy, yo, they gonna fly with kite now. The wind picking up.
I'm coming. Karim, what you doing?
Fly my kite.
Yeah, but not here. You can't fly kite near power lines, boy.
Why not? The wind good.
Because mommy say kite threads conduct electricity.
Yeah, kite. He's right. If your kite gets stuck in power lines, it can cause power outages, or even worse, it can get shocked.
Come, let's go and fly them in the pasture.
Yeah, that makes sense. Kite threads conduct electricity. Do not fly kites near overhead power lines. This can lead to electric shocks and power outages. If your kite gets stuck in power lines, do not try to retrieve it. Release it and call GRENADA. Always fly kites in open areas. Keep your kites far away from roads. And remember, always clean up after yourself.
GRENADA, energizing our Grenada.
I'm always on the move. Training, traveling, competing. So it's good to know I have Co-op Bank in the palm of my hand.
Introducing e-banking, one of many customer convenience services from Grenada Cooperative Bank. And there's more to come.
It's swift, simple, and secure.
Welcome home.
Back.
Are we back on air?
Yes, we are.
Yes, we
Yes, we are. George, I don't know what you're going to do with these suspects. Yeah, you're going to have to ring a bell. School call.
Something. Ding, ding.
Yes.
Bling, 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 bling.
You gotta lock them up and throw away the key.
Yeah.
Simply looking for the queue would be a great help.
What's that?
I said simply looking for the queue would be a great help.
Oh. You know.
I can confess that I'm not usually looking.
I do, but I just that one passing through.
Yep.
Yep.
Yes, go
Yeah,
ahead.
so where are we going next? Where are we going next? You said we were not coming back to that.
Absolutely not. That's not
Good. So where?
Well, we are
Covadis.
we're going to touch briefly on Grenada's exploits in the CCJ. Last year, was it last year that we had a referendum in Grenada, 2018, or was it 2017? Time moves so quickly. I really am at a loss. Somebody help me. Was the referendum last year or the year before?
We were not coming back.
Last year, was it?
No,
28?
it was 2017.
Not the year before.
It was
Really?
2017.
Time flies already?
Yeah, time
No. The one we had with the CCJ?
Yeah,
Yeah, that was last year.
that was last year. Good.
Yeah, yeah.
The other one was in 2016.
The other one was in
Yeah.
2016.
Because we had one in 2016 and then we didn't have any in 2017. Now we had one in 2018. I wonder if we're doing one in 2020. Anyway, while the Vote Yes campaign was in high gear, one of the local lawyers, very popular, well known by most people, Mr. Roberts Ferguson, took two cases to the original jurisdiction of the CCJ, and I won't bother to go into this jurisdiction thing with the CCJ. Suffice it to say that in the original jurisdiction, we can take cases that concern movement within the Caribbean and anything to do with the Treaty of Chaguaramas. That court is there to deal with that. The other jurisdiction now for which the referendum was held to get us to go to the select jurisdiction was where you could appeal cases. So right now we can't appeal any cases to the CCJ, which the people say is quite fine. We continue going to the Privy Council with our final appeals. So Mr. Ferguson took 2 cases to the CCJ in its original jurisdiction while the vote yes campaign was raging and in high gear. The rulings both came back from the CCJ that he was not successful in either, and they gave their reasons. We briefly discussed one last week with that family, which Mr. Ferguson has said that that case is not over, but I don't know what is going to happen with it, where it's going to go next, but he says it's not over. This other case where the ruling came down today, I think, a young man went to Trinidad and was denied entry on the basis that he presented an American passport, and the immigration officers had some information on someone with a similar name that had some drug convictions and outstanding matters relating to breaking the law in drug-related matters. So he was denied entry. He tried to invoke his right to freedom of movement by presenting himself as a Grenadian, but that didn't work because the documents he presented were not accepted by the immigration officers. And when the matter went before the CCJ ruled that the immigration officers were quite right not to accept these documents because the Treaty of Chaguaramas says it is the CARICOM passport or any passport issued by a member country which can give you the freedom of movement within the community. So even though you are a Caribbean national, Margaret and Catherine, neighbor string cut here, if you come down and you use your UK passport or US passport or any other passport, you do not have the right to free movement within the community as when you travel with your CARICOM passport. And that was clearly established by the Caribbean Court of Justice in this manner, because a driving license and a voter's ID, which the young man presented, cannot be accepted at the border by an immigration officer to say you're a national of a Caribbean country. So that application was dismissed. And in the other one with the family, in the short of it is that they were already within the country, they were not denied entry, and the court does not believe that the applicants or the claimants made a strong enough case to say that their rights were infringed in any way under the treaty, regardless of the experience that they had within the country, because they got detained by the police, went through a horrible experience at the police station. But as far as the court is concerned, the law enforcement is within their right to do their job. I guess, however, they see fit, which I don't believe I can just keep them. Law enforcement officers must have some parameters within which they operate. But the court deemed that they didn't make a strong enough case as far as the Treaty of Chaguaramas is concerned, which is what the court dealt with. So while we can say that the court is there, easy access, blah, 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 the rest of it, it does not mean when you go there, you're going to easily win anything. The freedom of movement case, the flagship case for the region with Schengen Area, she was denied entry into Barbados and subjected to treatment which she would have infringed on many of her rights under the treaty. And so she won that case because she could state her claim. So I don't think it's just a matter for the CCJ. I think if you're going to court, you have to be able to prove your case. You must have a case. You must be able to make a case properly before you go and stand before a court to say you believe that you were wrong in these kind of matters. So that is my 2 cents on those issues, that as far as freedom of movement within CARICOM is concerned. But one of the things, what I like about it is that I believe more and more people are becoming aware that they do have rights. That immigration officers cannot just behave or however they want to when you arrive at the border within the region. So it is a good thing that more people are recognizing that they do have rights and they can invoke these rights and they can be redressed if you believe your rights are infringed.
No, but I had a situation when I came through Trinidad, and it has become a little bit obnoxious. So I say I'm just passing through. So she says to me, where's your flight data? I said, what's on my phone? And my phone is off, plus I don't have data. The woman refused to take that. Now, this is the first time this is happening to me. Well, I need to see something, she says to me. I said, oh, okay. I said, let me tell you something, madam. Do you have a reason not to land in? I said, let's get that straight, right? Do you have a reason not to land me in Trinidad and Tobago? Whatever else you might think. And the excuse that they all come with is, oh, they're just doing their job. Excuse me. So I say, I understand what you're doing in terms of your job, but I would like you to know you have absolutely no right to deny me entry. The woman realized now that I think, I had to go and open my computer and pull up my booking. I said, plus, I know you see it all there. I left here from here. My flight was from here. But it just seems that the immigration officers just feel that at the border, just feel they can do what they like. And we're going to have more of these cases, Trust me, we'll have more of these things. Trust me.
Yes, and it's good. You don't want people to be denied and harassed at borders. But it's good when these cases come up because some of these immigration officers, they
take it too far.
Well, I don't know. I read the judgment, well, at least the news releases on the judgment for both cases, and it seemed to make sense to me, right?
You mean what was said in this particular case?
In this case, and also in the case in Barbados with the other 2 people, because it wasn't so much. They weren't denied entry, and their freedom of movement. I'm not sure if the right. I think looking at it, and I don't know every single thing, but just going based off all the reports that we had, I'm wondering if a lawsuit against the business itself would have made more sense. Would have made more sense than going through the CCJ and using it on the freedom of movement issue, because it really wasn't in the definition, at least in my opinion, and from what I heard of the case, I don't see it as that. I think too, for the same thing in Trinidad as well, and reading what they said, because I think the thing I had always concerned me about that particular case in Trinidad was the fact that he had landed on a U.S. passport. And I have always understood it to mean that whichever passport you land with, that
determines the treatment,
your nationality. You're basically treated as such. I travel with multiple passports as well, as a lot of people do, and I pick and choose when I'm going as to which citizen I want to land as. So
you have to, because you can't present one passport. There's nothing wrong with your citizenship. A lot of countries allow dual and triple, and some countries really don't care how many different citizenships you want to have. You have people with 3 and 4 and half a dozen passports, and in a lot of cases, it's perfectly legal. You know, I know someone, mother British, no, father British, mother American, child Grenadian. She has 3 passports. You know, and absolutely nothing wrong with that, but
exactly.
you can only travel on one at a time.
Yeah, and I think also too in saying that, you know, the only legally recognized document that grants you that access has to be a CARICOM passport or a passport of the country is also critical because, and yeah, you can determine which is which because I know what's happening here. Come January 2020, the US is switching over to what they refer to as real ID. So your driver's license, for example, has to be switched over to what is referred to as a real ID. And if you don't have that, you can't enter government buildings. So then you would have to use a passport, yes, to enter some government. Yeah,
really?
You have, so you have to change. All people in the US, they've got to switch their driver's license because most people that's what they use as ID. You very well know. And yeah, you wouldn't be able to enter certain federal government buildings without a real ID or enhanced ID. So there are 2 things. If you have a real ID, it works. The enhanced ID will also work. The advantage with the enhanced ID is that if you're entering the US between Mexico and Canada and the United States, and you're entering by sea or you're entering by land, you can use that. But if you're entering by air, you got to use a passport. You know, so I think in specifying which documents are acceptable as well, you know.
That is important because the truth is
but
that
until the Shanik Myrie case, I don't think anybody understood what their rights were. At least I could say I learned a hell of a lot out of that. So when these things come up, each of them needs a little bit of learning along the way.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that it was important.
And that's what I think is a very good thing coming out of it, that more and more people become aware of their rights as they travel. Because some of these immigration officers just put on the bulldog face and they try to frighten people when you land at the border. If you don't know your rights, you know.
I know. That's
very, very hard things.
Well, I let that immigration officer, I know my rights. I say, no. If you have a reason to not land me, tell me what it is.
Anyway, don't feel bad. I'm going to try that at the end of this. Still give me help.
But Trinidad has gotten a little bit too, you know.
But that all depends on, you know, but there's a whole other conversation on who's sitting at the the desk, you know what I mean?
That's the normal thing, yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So the problem is.
Yeah.
Because the Barbados one, I was shocked to know that they took it a case of you know, affecting the free movement of people. And I said, this wasn't that. Because the story I've heard, it's not really related at all. It's not.
No,
it's
because
not
because they had landed.
They had landed in the country.
Yeah, there was no issue.
Yeah, there was no issue for that. So what thing I said, no, I think it's more like how they was mistreated.
Yeah, I would have gone. I think I would have gone after the police and the business.
And the stress they cause these people. That is what you should go at. Because
but I guess, but on second thought, maybe they couldn't. They probably would not. Probably nobody in Barbados would have taken the case.
Really? Oh, that's what I thought. Yeah, so they corrected. Yeah, there's no case for that.
Yeah, because you know, there's not. It's not that there isn't a case, but I'm saying is which attorney in Barbados would take the case, you know, and whether or not you would definitely, I mean.
They might take it, but what they might charge is another story.
Yeah, it's the way they've been treated by the Barbadian people, by the officers. That is what they should go at, you know.
Guys, can I just jump in here for a minute?
Sure.
There are a couple of comments on Facebook here. T.F. Richards says, in looking at the Barbados matter involving the Grenadians, I think the court was basically right in its judgment. I'm here wondering if the right suit was brought, because basically their movement was not infringed, but maybe their treatment was questionable. Okay?
Yes.
And Margaret, I am in total agreement with you. I believe that judgment was fine. There are a lot of people on Facebook over the past week or so who have been questioning whether or not the right suit was brought. And essentially, that's what T.F. Richards is saying here. All right? The one I have some difficulty with is the Trinidad one. Because if you guys would listen to the statement issued by the CCJ, you'll see that it raises a few questions. I have the statement right in front of me here, and I would like to read that for you briefly. CARICOM citizens have important rights, but to exercise these rights, clear documentary evidence of their nationality is required. Keep that statement in mind, okay? This was the outcome of the case of Bain versus Trinidad and Tobago that was decided by the Caribbean Court of Justice. Mr. Bain, a citizen of both Grenada and the United States of America, claimed that his right to freedom of movement was infringed when he was denied entry into the Twin Island state when arriving from Grenada just before midnight on December 14, 2017. He presented himself as an American citizen, producing only his USA passport, as his Grenadian passport had expired some years earlier. Upon arrival at Piarco International Airport, immigration officials questioned him concerning information they had received about a man with the same name who has convictions on drug-related offenses. Although he denied any drug convictions, Mr. Bain was refused entry and was sent back to Grenada on an early flight on December 15th, 2017, although he had informed the immigration officers that he was a citizen of Grenada and thus entitled to freedom of movement in CARICOM states. As evidence of his citizenship, listen here, as evidence of his citizenship, Mr. Bain had produced his Grenadian driver's license, which stated that he was a Grenadian citizen. He also showed his Grenadian voter's identification card, which stated that he was born in Grenada. In addition, his USA passport also listed Grenada as his country of birth. These documents, Mr. Bain argued, should be enough to invoke his right of freedom of movement as explained by the CCJ in Myrie versus the State of Barbados. In its judgment, the court determined that while there was no doubt, hear me, no doubt that Mr. Bain is a Grenadian citizen, he did not present sufficient documentation to prove it to the immigration officers. Your driver's license, say you're born there. Your voter ID card, say you're born there. And it's not enough evidence. Ask yourself, doesn't that raise a couple of questions?
Not really, Joyce, because standard acceptable documentations as proof of citizenship is generally a birth certificate and a passport.
Yeah.
Not a driver's license, and not a voter registration card. And that's a worldwide thing.
Let me continue with the statement here from the CCJ. And this is not just a release. This is a release from the CCJ. It says, in its judgment, the court determined that while he was no doubt a Grenadian citizen, he did not present sufficient documentation to prove it to the immigration officers. The presentation of a Grenadian driver's license and voter's identification card was not sufficient. That's what you're saying, Max. Unlike the Grenadian passport, neither document was meant to serve as evidence of citizenship. In addition, they were neither machine-readable nor designed to be stamped by immigration officials. And somehow it seems to me that that is where the issue arises. I continue. The court also rejected the argument that the notation in Mr. Bain's U.S. passport that he was born in Grenada conclusively proved citizenship. Conclusively. It was noted that it was possible that Mr. Bain could have renounced his citizenship or have it stripped it stripped away.
That's correct.
Or have it stripped away by the Grenadian government, while mere birth in a country does not always automatically evidence citizenship. That's the CCJ's argument. The CCJ considered whether Mr. Bain waived his right to free movement as a national of Grenada when he presented his U.S. passport. The court noted that if someone with dual citizenship exercises their rights attached to one nationality, it does not eliminate their other nationality and the rights attached to that citizenship. Therefore, Mr. Bain was denied entry based on his U.S. passport. Therefore, if Mr. Bain was denied entry based on his U.S. passport, he could still claim his rights under the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas if he could forthwith prove that he is a Grenadian citizen. If he could prove that he's a Grenadian citizen. So what then is the value of the driver's license if you can't prove, if it doesn't prove that you are a Grenadian citizen, or the voter ID for that matter?
Although I'll say this, right, that in many instances, a lot of weight is placed on a driver's license. Sometimes a driver's license will give you more access than even your national ID, because part of the reason being is that the driver's license is seen to be linked back into Interpol and stuff like that if they wanted to. So it's some good questions to be asked, really and truly, and it's good discussions.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, that's why I have, I spoke to the attorney who handled both of these cases on behalf of the Grenadian clients, Ruggles Ferguson. I spoke to him today, and I've asked him to come in here on Sunday morning and explain this to us, 11 o'clock on Sunday morning. By the way, Yvonne Joseph here says, I was just talking about that case concerning the passport with my son, and he said it has to be more than a passport. He said once you're traveling with a valid American passport, Trinidad cannot send him back to Grenada.
Send back to that. That's correct.
That's right.
My son said he was traveling with the correct passport because Grenadian passports do not carry a visa. My son said he can travel with his USA passport. My son said it got to be something else, not the passport. T.F. Richard says, they both say that you are born there, but you are now an American citizen and the passport supersedes all the rest.
Everything else, that's correct.
Tony Ben said,
that ED card.
So I'd be interested to know that if he appeals to the...
But I think there's another, you're going to read something else, George?
Tony Ben says, in every U.S. passport, place of birth is stated. TF says the stamping is contradictory because it is safe for traveling. And he goes on to say, but George, here's this. If I return to Grenada now and present my U.S. passport through all the immigration office, though all the immigration officers know me, they would have to give me time in the country because this is the passport presented.
That's the funny thing about these things. And when you fill out that ED card, you fill out that immigration card.
One thing everyone has to get clear. Your place of birth is not necessarily your citizenship.
Right,
yeah,
exactly.
That's correct.
Exactly.
Right.
That's the key.
Two different things.
Right. So
two different
that's
things.
how the equation. Your
right.
The passport you hold is your citizenship. Because you can have a U.S. passport that says you're born in Switzerland.
But Bev, early in the statement I just read from the CCJ, it clearly said the man was definitely a Grenadian citizen.
Yes, the CCJ accepted that he was. But when you turn up at the border with documents that immigration officials are not authorized to or equipped to accept, that's a totally different story.
And therein lies the issue, Bev. They are not equipped to accept. And that's where I believe the issue arises.
Well, I think that there's another thing too where they said that under the Treaty of Chaguaramas.
Wait, Margaret, I would put more weight on them not being authorized to accept those, because the immigration officers have their book of rules that they have to work with. And if they are not authorized to accept certain documents, even though the documents prove who you are, they still can't.
So isn't that the issue, that maybe they should have been informed that, you know, I mean, you're saying the only thing that matters is the passport. Then what value? As far
as immigration is concerned.
Well, but it's not only that, though. To back that up, George, there's also that crucial line in that ruling as well, which says that the appropriate, which they also relied on in their judgment, that the appropriate travel document to invoke the right of freedom of movement is the CARICOM passport or a passport issued by a CARICOM member state.
Great Mags. Is that clearly known to every Tom, Dick, and Harry? Because that's the point I'm trying to make, you know? That's the point I'm trying to make.
Don't forget that ignorance is the lie is no excuse.
Right, Jerry? Right, Jerry? Absolutely correct, Jerry. But
the other point that the guy Ned made is, so why didn't send him back to the U.S.?
No, that is a critical question.
That to me is the question.
That is the question, because he was not traveling on a Grenada passport. So why you send him back here?
Well, I suspect they send him back because
to the country of origin.
The original
where
flight.
He came from on the flight. Yeah. Yes, that's what they do.
So if you have a problem, you all deal with that over there.
Yeah.
TF goes on to say here, you're always a citizen of the place that you are born unless you renounce it. However, the document that you use and your main travel document would have all the power at the time.
Hey, TF, being born is not a guarantee that you'll have it. You know, they could take it away from you even so. And hey, Stokely Carmichael is dead and gone, but Trinidad and Tobago did revoke his citizenship, even if he was born there.
And Tony Ben is asking the same question you guys were just asking. So why did they send them back to Grenada and not to the U.S.?
My guess, I don't know. My guess is probably because that's where he came from.
That's the origin of the flight. Yeah.
That was the origin of the flight.
Because if they didn't land him, because once they didn't think they didn't land him, so if they didn't land him, then really and truly they had to send him back where he came from. But another lawyer might argue differently.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good question, but I think they send him back based on where he came from on the flight.
All right, guys, perhaps you might want to fire off at Mr. Ferguson on Sunday morning, 11 o'clock, if you got some time. All right, take it away.
Yep. We also have on our menu this evening hurricane season just 2 days away. So, what is happening as far as preparation goes? George and Nadma. George, have you received anything from Nadma as yet?
Oh, Beverly, thank you so much. I love you. Thank you so much for bringing that up. I'm not going to ad-lib here. I'm going to read for you. Look, the hurricane season begins, 2 days from now? Day after tomorrow? Okay.
Right.
And I have found it strange that up until Monday of this week, today is Thursday? I had not received anything from the National Disaster Management Agency until Monday. Monday, somebody phoned me and told me that I am invited to attend a meeting. Apparently, they're trying to rejuvenate a subcommittee of the National Disaster Management Agency. It's called the National Public Education and Information Committee, and they're trying to rejuvenate that. So she wanted me to attend a meeting on Monday. I got this call on Monday, and she wanted me to attend this meeting on Monday. Excuse me, she wanted me to notify NADMA on Monday, the same day, if I would still be a member of the committee. On Tuesday was what? Today is the 30th?
30th. Tuesday was the 28th.
28th. On Tuesday, I received this letter, hand-delivered, from the National Emergency whatever. This letter is dated May 14th. It was hand-delivered to me exactly 2 weeks later, on the 28th, 2 days ago. Please be reminded that the National Disaster Management Plan, Final Draft 2011, states that Grenada Broadcast is a member of the National Public Education and Information Committee. Stop grinning, Bev. Stop grinning. As a consequence, the National Disaster Management Agency is kindly requesting the submission of the names and contact information of 2 representatives, a primary and an alternate, from your organization to serve as members of the National Public Education and Information Committee. The attached excerpts from the National Disaster Management Plan outlines the roles and responsibilities of the committee. I shall be grateful if the names and contact information of these representatives could be submitted to NADMA's office on or before Monday 27th. That's the day before I received the letter. By contacting Ms. Valerie Phillip, Administrative Assistant, on telephone number so. Okay. Guys, by the way, as I speak to you, I'm seeing an indication here that we may have lost Facebook. I see that John had been complaining earlier on. Anyhow, let me finish off this letter. In light of the foregoing, we are hereby inviting your nominees to attend a committee meeting on Thursday, the 30th of May, that's today, at 10:30 at NADMA's conference room at Fort Frederick. Please be advised that the committee is expected to meet on a monthly basis and should report to the National Emergency Advisory Council. The chairperson for the committee is Ms. Leslie Ann Johnson, Acting Director of the Government Information Service. Folks, Bev, I'm sure you saw this letter from our friend Janet Silver. She sent an email to all of us asking about the state of preparedness. I give a thumbs down because I have not received a single thing. I have been going back into my files and digging up stuff and talking about it on the air because I believe the people ought to be informed. But nothing from NADMA. Bev, have you received anything from NADMA?
Oh no. I don't think I'm still on their mailing list.
Ah.
Well, that is my conclusion because I have not received anything from NADMA for a very, very long time. So I conclude that I'm no longer on the mailing list.
So you too?
Yeah, but if that signals the start of our preparedness for the hurricane season, we better hope we don't get any severe weather to deal with because obviously we're not prepared.
Bev.
What's happening in St. Vincent?
I haven't particularly heard any excitement. In fact, what I saw a while ago, well, just about 6 o'clock, that they put out a thing saying that we are under flood watch. And last year I found that there was this overemphasis and too much dramatization of the weather. And I hope we're not going to see it again this year. Because to me, that does not help. In fact, it hinders. Because when you have done that a couple of times and people see nothing happen, They kind of just shrug the shoulder. I mean, oh, we have a flood watch in St. Vincent, and I'm going like, really? And the laugh of that story is this. I could say this without self-contradiction. I was the only person who put out weather today that said, we're going to get showers. You could go back and read it. I said, as the day progresses, the possibility of showers will be there. None of the other reports said that. And then all of a sudden, at around 6 o'clock, we have flood watch. and the other thing about it is that at this time of the year, when the earth has been so dry for so long, the prospects of flooding are lower because it will take the earth to have gotten a certain amount of saturation before you get to that. We didn't have that kind of rain. I mean, it stopped just about when we started, but it wasn't heavy rain, you know. So we have to watch what I think is that overemphasizing the weather, which I saw a lot of last year. And there was a lot of wrong calls last year. I really hope they get it right this year because that is dangerous. People go like, stoops them again.
You know. Jerry, don't hold your breath.
Who is it, George?
I say don't hold your breath. I want you to be around for a little bit longer.
All right, George, I'll keep it going. But you're right, because, I mean, last year, particularly, it seemed to me that what we were doing, I think both Grenada and St. Vincent was taken out of direction from what Barbados said. And there was a huge, there was sometimes last year when it was just so wrong. Businesses were closed, schools were sent home, and all this kind of stuff, and nothing happened.
Yes, and I don't think Dominica, which has not yet recovered from Maria, is in any better shape because there was an article last week, Tuesday, out of Dominica, where the minister responsible for she's not responsible for disaster. She was speaking at a climate resilience consultation, but she's a minister, which means she sits in cabinet. And she, last week Tuesday, was calling on the councils, the local councils, to move swiftly to be prepared for the hurricane season. That was last week Tuesday. And if that is when you're calling on someone to move swiftly to make sure you're prepared.
In a country that has so much experience with it.
In a country that has not yet recovered from Hurricane Maria. And 10 days before the start of the hurricane season, that is when you're going to be calling on councils to move swiftly to get prepared. And I have not heard anything significant in any other country, any other island, about preparedness for the season. I don't know what is going on.
They are going to do it on the 1st of June.
They had a meeting in Barbados last week, it was?
Yeah.
Or this week. Again.
It was last week.
A meeting at that level to have discussions on what to do. That making sense to anybody?
Margaret Francis.
Really? After all that has happened in this region, not even over the last 2 years, with severe weather, with flooding, with hurricanes, with 5 hurricanes. As far as I'm concerned, you need to create a category 6 now for hurricanes.
No, we had it already. Don't worry. Mario was.
Exactly, that's why I said we need to create a category 6. And with all that has happened in the region over the past 10 years, 5 years, 3 years, with severe weather, all of the people responsible for ensuring that we are ready for the season, they just seem not to realize that the 1st of June is the day after tomorrow.
I will tell you where the whole question of the season, that kind of stuff comes up most. Anytime there's a discussion on the economic threats to the region, the business of the weather is prominent. But outside of that, especially when we're talking about our debt and stuff like that, and justification, outside of that, nobody mentions
Jerry, the economy takes precedence over the lives of the people of the Caribbean.
No, but I'm serious that anytime they want to impress the international community about our debt and the cause of our debt and the reason why we need more money, The weather is pushed and natural disasters is pushed right forward, front and center. But if you ask them, what are you doing? So you receive some money. What are you doing to mitigate against these things? There's nothing. Seriously, nothing. We depend that when something we depend on when something happens, that we then go with begging cap and look for sympathy from the international community. But we have done nothing ourselves.
And you hear about all this money that comes into the country to deal with climate projects, Well, last year in the election, Dr. Mitchell announced 120 million to deal with water projects. I don't hear of one water project start yet. And the money was here. In his words, he says this is not some wild manifesto promise. The money is here. And I don't hear about one water project up to now.
Listen to me, Bev. Before hold your thought, right? Because I'm going to point out to you that Boris, the man in England name again, Boris Johnson, is going to be taken to court because maybe we have to implement because he lied about Brexit. Maybe we need to do that,
Wait, back up here.
What? They're taking him to court because of Brexit?
Listen to because they're now saying that he's supposed to one of the front runners to be Prime Minister. This private citizen is taking him to court, saying that he lied to them with the data that he gave about Brexit. And the matter is really going to court. I said, well, the Caribbean, we lose someone else for a long time, man.
Yeah, so.
But then again, they own the court, so I ain't so sure about that part.
Exactly. Justice in the Caribbean is totally different. Right. So we have all this money coming in. When you read reports of Dominica getting how much money for climate resilience and all of this, and everybody getting money, and yet still at the same time, we can't adequately prepare for the hurricane season.
Because the monies that come to look at, for example, making sure that your building code is updated and all that, it never goes there. The money is used to play politics. The money is used to play politics. If you see some place where you could put up something and get a few votes, that is where it goes. To deal with the basic things like how are we building? Do we have the right legislation? Do we have the right? Nobody pays attention to them things.
But I saw a story where this old building, which was damaged from Hurricane Ivan, 2004, 15 years ago, and the building collapsed in the town of St. George. And a day later, the building was still there. Nobody moved it yet.
Yeah.
On a busy street in the town of St. George. And someone who was interviewed said she complained to the Ministry of Works about the building when she saw the state it was in, and which other ministry, 2 different ministries she mentioned that she went to, and they say it's not their responsibility. So the building stayed there and it collapsed.
Can you believe that? Can you believe that, Bev? It's not their responsibility.
Nobody go by and look at the building. Nobody did anything about it. The building collapsed, blocked part of the road, and it was there 24 hours later. No authority had gone by to see.
You realize that, let's just say something happened and that building was unstable, and somebody passed, and when they passed, the building finished collapsing and knocked them down, killed them. Realize it's nobody's responsibility to tell him.
Nobody responsible.
Well, yeah, you'd have to find the owner. You'd have to find the owner of the building.
Find the owner, and that is a whole new different thing.
Yeah.
The owner could probably claim an act of God.
But the building has fallen.
Oh yes,
all these years
Margaret.
after.
Yes, Margaret.
The building has fallen on the public road in the town of St. George. So even if they were not responsible for the building when it was standing up, regardless of how rickety it was, it has now collapsed. It's on the road.
And the first role of government is to protect the citizen.
Yeah.
Exactly.
First role of government. But in these parts, they seem not to realize that the first role of government seems to be to get votes.
Yes, because because the political party is the machinery that control the state. And the only job the political party has is to get nothing else. And that is why that is translated into the governance of the country. So instead of our elected officials governing the country, they're campaigning every day.
That's what it's about.
It is a party thing, you know. So we can't say it enough. And I was glad to hear Kaji say it on George's toast in the morning. We just have to get rid of political parties. One way or the other, we have to get rid of them.
No, did you listen, Bev, to Kaji Hood on the weekend?
Yes, I heard the interview.
Yeah. Seems to be agreeing with you?
Yes. Where political parties need to go. They have no place in the Constitution. And we just need to use the Constitution as it is. We don't even need Constitution reform to get rid of them. Because what is happening now is an aberration of the system where political parties are putting forth candidates. The Constitution don't support that.
And, you know, having been looking around on Facebook, I get the feeling that momentum is growing, eh? That feeling, it's growing.
Yeah, because more and more people are realizing that a political party should not be allowed to control the state.
Boy, that is going to be very interesting.
I know,
yes. Right? Yes, it should not be.
Listen, they almost could claim squatters' rights now.
That's true. That's very true.
Yeah, I'm telling you, these were this for so long.
Very true.
Yes.
I did see
where you went.
I see a whole squatter community in where the place name moved. You see? Down by Belmont area. Lord, I forget the name of the place, but across the road from Belmont. I see a whole squatter community moved. So even if they're claiming squatters' rights, they can be moved. And they have to be moved. We will never progress as a region until we get rid of political parties.
You know, I'm sorry that Dwyer is not here tonight, because if he was, and I think he agrees with the statement that you're making, Bev, I think if he was, I would ask him to sort of draft the way forward. You know, because, okay, so you say get rid of political parties. Good. What do you replace them with? Now, it's fine to say they need to be replaced, but I just think you need to explain, you need to educate the public on the way forward. Because right now, a lot of people know, yeah, we don't want them guys again. But how do we move forward? What do we do?
Okay. The parliament of the country calls for members of parliament, not for members of party. The MP don't stand for member of party. It stands for member of parliament. And
you could say that not switch that already.
The person is supposed to be elected by the constituency. So George, and I don't want to start this discussion here and now, but the constituency need to decide that, look, there are 2 or 3 people that we think we could work with, and these are the people that we would like to see in our parliament. So,
who are the people who are going to put forward those 3 people?
The constituency. It is the constituency that the member of parliament is supposed to represent, not the party.
Okay, but
so when we have this thing where delegates select somebody and then the party put forward this person to run in a constituency, so the constituency just accept that person as who they're gonna vote for. They don't have no options. But here it is, you have a constituency with people within the constituency who work with the constituents and who people within the constituency may be comfortable with. They know them. They par with them every day. And they say, boy, you know, you'd be a good man to represent us in the parliament. Let the constituencies choose who they want to represent them.
Yeah, I think what Bev is talking about, George, like, so back in African societies, you had what was basically referred to as a council of elders, which basically is what the members of the community chose. Nobody ran for an election. There was a council of elders.
What's today's equivalent of this council of elders?
Well, I think what Bev is proposing, would be something akin to that council of elders, because it comes from within that community. You don't have a party running. There never was a party running at all. So you had the council of elders that each village had their council of elders. Each village had their own council of elders. However they determined the selection of that council, they determined that.
Isn't that a little bit like what Cuba does?
Well,
Cuba has something very similar to what you just described.
Right.
So that the person who is selected at that level does not make it to become a minister. The person is the person in charge of the constituency. But they pick somebody else to be a member of the parliament. So winning at that level does not make you a member of parliament.
Does that make you a member of parliament?
No. Winning at that constituency level where, like, what must I call it? The village.
MP.
Yes, the MP, right. You know?
Yeah, so I'm not even going to get into who should be ministers and all of that yet. Because we have to start from the ground. And I think it is wrong. And I want to discuss this with some constitution experts. I think it is wrong for a party to come and present somebody and say, party delegates choose this person as the candidate for the constituency. Really? I live in the constituency. I never see this person yet. I don't know him. But all of a sudden, he or she becomes the person that I'm supposed to go and vote for because the party says so.
Yep. And that's why you have this concept that they put a dry stick. You need to put a dry stick, you see? So it has nothing to do with representation.
Nothing. So as we often hear in election time, if this party put a dog or a puss, or go up in Granite and mountain, go get one of the monkey, them come up there and put them to run. You vote. Because it's a party thing.
It's a party thing.
No, man. That is totally destroying our psyche, destroying our social fabric, and we have to get rid of it. There are better ways. Anyway, it's time to take another break. And
hold on, Bev. Before you take your break, you're going to identify some constitutional lawyers to take this thing for. You know, it's fine to sit and blah 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 about it here, but something has to be done.
Yes, I agree.
So, what about us identifying these constitutional experts with whom we can consult?
Yes, we can. We want to do that now?
Start throwing out names. We're not going to hold you tonight to the names you throw out, but let's give people an idea that something is in the works.
I know a man called J.K. Roberts who knew the Constitution very well.
You see, but that's the problem, Bev. You see, in our society, J.K. would not be, Ricky could say all the right things he wants, unless it comes from a certain person or persons in our society. Nobody pays attention. And that's what we have to change, that information is not the ambit of the remit of a specific person who got there and never even knew before they got there what they're talking about.
Exactly. And we need to also understand and accept that the person in authority not telling you what you should know, they're telling you what they want.
They want you to know. Exactly so. Exactly.
And that is what you need to understand, that you as the person on the ground, not ever the important person to them.
You know, and a thought that's going through my mind as I sit here listening to this conversation is you're going to have to be very careful about handpicking these people, because it seems like it's going to be very difficult to pick somebody who is not or has not been aligned with some political party in the past.
Oh, there are people out there, George. I personally, because I mentioned J.K. Roberts as one person, I personally know people out there who are very very knowledgeable about the Constitution, and
All right.
they are not aligned to any political party.
Okay.
But we have this thing which Jerry mentioned that we have to fight, that people only listen to things when it comes from certain people, you know? So when these people who are knowledgeable about the Constitution come and say, this is what it says, except Mr. So-and-so or Mrs. So-and-so repeat it, it has no weight and no merit. And what you do not understand is that the same system that you want to break up, you do not expect the people in the system that you want to break up to help you break it up.
To help to break it up, exactly.
It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So if the people who know about the Constitution say this is the way the Constitution reads and this is what it says and all of that, somebody who wants to maintain the status quo gonna say, foolishness they're talking. And because you see that person as an authority figure, you will automatically jump on the foolishness they're talking train without examining for yourself what is being discussed. And that is why we have so many sheep putting on colors and running behind various political parties without thinking for themselves. And it's what Dwyer says, think for yourself and think of others.
Okay.
And stop behaving like God don't give all of us the same brain.
All right, so let's go to the break.
Yeah.
A natural disaster can change your life in minutes. Preparation is the best protection for your family and business. Prepare now. Create a disaster plan and make sure everyone knows what to do. Store water, non-perishable food, and medication. Remember basic emergency supplies such as batteries and flashlights. Trim overhanging trees. If trees near power lines are unsafe to trim, call GRENADA at 237 for assistance or advice. Install surge protectors to safeguard your electrical devices against outages and intermittent surges. For more information, visit grenlac.com.
GRENADA, energizing our Grenada.
My name is Jennifer James, and I've been making confectionaries for the past 7 years. Growing up as a little girl, I always wanted to make these little things. Fudge, sugar cake, tamarind ball, these little things. I read something actually, and it said that tamarind itself is very good because it eliminates fat from the liver. You get the mature tamarind and you crack it, you shell it out. I would add a little baking soda, some spices. I would leave it to rest probably for about 2 hours and then add my sugar and just start kneading. I usually knead it hard enough so that I can roll it. When I finish roll it, I will paste it with the actual white or brown sugar and you have a nice tamarind ball. I have been providing food fair with tamarind ball about 6 years now. I started producing tamarind ball to sell for the school children. I thought I could advance somewhere. So I went to food fair and I asked one of the sales persons there if they would be interested in selling my tamarind ball. And she told me yes. She told me to bring 20 packets to start with. It was really a joy for me because I wanted to extend on my little business. My name is Jennifer James and I work with the food fair to provide you with tamarind balls.
I'm always on the move. Training, traveling, competing. So it's good to know I have Co-op Bank in the palm of my hand.
Introducing e-banking, one of many customer convenience services from Grenada Cooperative Bank, and there's more to come.
It's swift, simple, and secure.
Welcome home.
Juve chocolates, cocoa nibs, and cocoa balls from Diamond Estate Grenada are now available at Amazon.com, Amazon.ca, Amazon.co.uk, and GrenadaMarket.com. Try their sensational touch of nutmeg and a touch of ginger chocolates, 75% dark and rich, 100% pure cocoa, and their 60% dark and sweet chocolate bars today. Amazon Prime members enjoy free shipping on these orders in the USA, Canada, and Europe. GrenadaMarket.com. When you can't come to the island, the products of the island will come to you.
For our final moments on this edition of Mek We Chat, we're looking at the issues that, as I said, we have pulled out some issues that we think we should look at, and they're important to the region. And that's what we have been discussing. So, Bev?
One of the issues very, very important to the region, which we don't pay enough attention to, is our banking. Recently, there's been a lot of noise about the banking fees, and the banks ain't bothering with us when they make noise about the fees, because the banks just keep rolling right along and they're doing what they're doing. Mm-hmm. But the top dog in Antigua has said that the Canadian banks in that country are looking at pulling out. Since the sale of Scotiabank to Republic, he has signaled that the other Canadian banks in Antigua and Barbuda are looking to pull out. He doesn't sound sad, he sounds very happy. Let him go. Reminds me of the river song, Margaret. Let them come, we'll go bury them in the sea. Well, he is singing, let them go, our banking will be sure. He is singing the song that after they go, the indigenous banks will be allowed to grow, because his line of reasoning is that all the business that these banks have, when they go, they leave the business behind. The indigenous banks will get it, and correspondent banking will be secure. So nobody don't have to worry about that. But we really and truly need to pay more attention to what is happening with banking in the Caribbean, because sooner or later, if things continue the way they are, we are going to be cut off from the rest of the world as far as banking is concerned. We won't be able to purchase anything online, which a lot of us like to do. We won't be able to pay our children's school fee for those who have children in school in the States. There are a lot of things we will not be able to sit comfortably at our computers or on our phone and do, because we are going to be cut off. And what the top dog in Antigua, aka Prime Minister Gaston Brown, has signaled is not good for the region at all. Because historically speaking, we know that if a bank leaves one country, it's not staying in the others. It's gonna go. Over the years, when the banks have exited, they don't exit one country, they go. There are so many banks.
Beverley, this situation is very dangerous. And the flippancy, I call it that, with which I think the Prime Minister of Antigua has dealt with this matter worries me. But what is even more worrying to me is what are people like the central bank saying about this attitude? Because I'm saying it here again, the explanation that the Prime Minister has given about the fact that, the banks will be bigger and therefore will be able to maintain our correspondent banking relationship tells me he does not understand what correspondent banking relationship is about. And I want somebody to contest that. He does not understand it from the statement that is reported, unless whoever reported it.
Or he's being disingenuous.
Well, that is past being disingenuous. To me, it is too much of a serious matter.
I want to go in the direction of being disingenuous, because isn't he the same one who said that he had a career in banking and he worked in banking?
He's seen as a senior executive.
He clearly knows about that correspondent banking. He can't tell me that he worked in banking and he doesn't know. He's being disingenuous, and he realizes.
So you mean fooling the masses?
Yes. Because the masses doesn't understand. You are giving him too much credit by saying that he doesn't know. You've given him too much credit.
I'm glad I given him the credit anyway. Let me just break in here for a second, folks, because we talked about the whole question of weather a while ago. Somebody has this up. According to the AI Met Office, a flood watch is in effect for St. Vincent and the Grenadines. However, the senior Met Office, Rick at Light FM Beckley, has reduced the flood watch to a cloud watch for the Grenadines. See what tell all you?
You have a cloud watch?
Well, then what else? But I just told all you.
Wait a minute.
Way
What
out
is
of
a
the
cloud watch?
blue.
Let me Google.
I have been working and studying meteorology for most of my life. I had never heard that term.
What is a cloud watch?
Cloud watch. No, the person probably just coined it.
It's just something new.
Yes, it can't be anything else. But I just told you so. All of a sudden, there's this thing out about flood watch.
So that's in effect now, Jerry? Jerry? Is that watch in effect now?
If it is
in effect now?
No, that was supposed to have happened. Yes, already. No. But as I said to you before, I don't know where that could have come from. So when I saw this scrolling past, I couldn't help but laugh at it there. But let me get back to banking. Because this whole question of the banks. Listen, we all know that this region, I can tell you this for a fact. I used to pay my son's accommodation in the States by my credit card. And then 1 month, it will not give me the option for St. Vincent anymore. That created what kind of confusion. I was actually in Grenada. I think Beverley screamed out, right? At you. I was actually in Grenada when it happened, right?
Yeah.
Yes. And there was this predicament, right? Now, there are some sites I used to go to buy stuff from. They no longer give you most Caribbean countries as country. We are working ourselves to be disconnected from the financial community. And all of this other talk you hear that is going on there, it's just not making sense. And when the people like the central bank and stuff stay quiet on these, it bothers me even more. Because I am saying to you, the stuff that Prime Minister Gaston Brown has said makes no sense. None. And more importantly, most of the indigenous banks, now the question of saying, okay, if we let all the other banks go, then the indigenous banks will get the business. It doesn't work so. The big banks have enough resources to capitalize them, right? So if Scotiabank or whoever needs to have a certain capital pool, the shareholders will dispense that and say, fine, St. Vincent has a capital pool of $100 million, and just call that figure, right? And they don't have to put the money there, but it is there, knowing that if St. Vincent needs to draw on that $100 million, it is there. Most of the small banks, because we don't have no really big business and no really big deposits, most of our indigenous banks, if somebody went to them with a business plan for $20 million, they cannot do it themselves. They do not have $20 million that they can put into that project.
Right. But we all know that the indigenous banks bank with the international banks.
Exactly. So for the Prime Minister to be saying that publicly, Margaret, I think I have to borrow a word. It's past disingenuous. Because it makes no sense.
None.
And then to add to that, it will encourage the growth of the local banks, and therefore we will, and as a result, since then, therefore, we'll maintain our corresponding banking relations. That is the dumbest statement I've ever heard about anybody who understands banking. I'm serious.
No. He knows exactly who he's talking to.
You're right.
That's disgusting. Right. He knows exactly what he's doing. You cannot tell me that you boast that you have this experience in banking and you don't know that basic principle.
Exactly. You know,
craziness, man.
But, and this is why we are going to borrow this saying, this mantra from Dwyer, and we're going to use it. People need to think for themselves. think for yourself.
Well, right now we have in the Caribbean group think, you know.
Yeah,
Group think.
one person tell a whole group of people what to think, and that is it. It's done.
That's exactly why they drop literature.
Yeah, because they don't want the individual thinking.
Wouldn't be able to dissect the parts and think about them.
Yeah, because this thing, money is the thing that people go crazy about the most. And it's the management of which we pay attention to the least. And it is such a paradox. But when the Prime Minister of Antigua can be threatening the entire Eastern Caribbean Currency Union, and nobody seems to be paying attention, where are we going?
No, it's scary.
Yeah, what people think for themselves, we have this inquiring mind. Everything that we hear somebody said we don't understand, we ask question. But it just seems this is not happening there. It's like we're not hearing. Oh, he doesn't care. They just say what they have to say and they carry on with it. Even though it doesn't make any sense, nobody just say, well, what are you talking about, so and so? They're not, no question at all. So that is what we don't think. We don't think.
You know what that has got us into, Catherine? You see that British American clique is this business? Trust me, that is at the heart of that. That people believe that at the end of the day, when something like that goes wrong, they can come back to the government to fix it for them.
Exactly. No. Precisely so. Even now, I hear people talking about this Prime Minister and that Prime Minister and whatever. And like they expect them to do something.
As if their responsibility is to do something about it. And worse, how are they going to do it? They must take other taxpayers' money and do it for them.
Yes, that is what people sitting down and waiting on. That's exactly what they're sitting and waiting on. That's why they don't decide to do anything for themselves. Because at some stage, the government's supposed to dip into the public purse and take taxpayers' money and give it to them. You know, and that is exactly what they sit down waiting for. As if it's going to happen. It will happen.
But that it shouldn't happen. Because if it should not happen. Because if they had gotten all the full benefits of their investment, nobody in the public could have shared it.
Not at all.
So why, when they take a risk and it fails, the taxpayer must come back and pay back to them?
Yeah, I have a serious problem with that.
I have a problem with the arguments on that.
But we just have a few minutes to go, you know, and recently the Minister of Health raised the issue of how Grenada's national health insurance is going to be funded, you know, to look at options. Now, as far as I'm concerned, government has one option to collect money, and that is to tax people. There's
they have no other way.
Option. So when you have the detractors and the supporters and the herd out there saying, oh, all he said was an option. There is no other option. Government don't have any other way to collect money.
But let me tell you something. He said something that to me was significant. He says right now, health is 7% of GDP, of the, well, not GDP, of the budget. Right? If they raised it to 10%, they'll collect $85 million. But the whole program is supposed to cost $185 million. So you have to multiply the economy by 300% to be able to support it.
I asked the health minister which insurance company is going to underwrite this health insurance, this national health insurance. And his reply was that the government is going to do it, which means it's going to do it. And that cannot happen. That's a recipe for crash and burn.
But just listen, the facts the man just gives you tells you it cannot happen. If they already they can't even get up to half the amount of money.
Exactly.
Okay, how they could do it? And he said it. And what I have to give them credit for, they're the only people who have placed an actual figure on this matter for discussion. The point is we're starting too late. These are things we should have thought about maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago, before the financial crisis and all these things. But to do them now in the context of the economies, most of these economies which are in deficit, it cannot happen.
Well, not only that too. I mean, healthcare is an expensive proposition. It doesn't matter where you are. I mean, countries like the United States and Western Europe and stuff, where there's substantially more resources available, they are having problems paying for healthcare.
Exactly.
So, you know, my thinking is, look, something has to be done. The question is, how are you going to accomplish it? My thinking is, one, probably to place a lot more emphasis on preventative care. Given the fact that a lot of our problems in the Caribbean, which is not to say that we aren't affected by other diseases, but I think certainly in Grenada's case, that a lot of the problems there are basically related to lifestyle. So the diabetes, the hypertension, the heart disease, and the complication that comes with those, especially diabetes. And so I think the emphasis has to be in that area. And then probably people are going to have to realize that if the government wants to provide health care, they're not going to be able to pay for every single thing. So probably what they're going to have to look at is select a bucket of basic things, exactly, of basic things that people can have, that they can fund. Now, how are you going to decide that? I don't know.
No,
I'm just saying.
Pick up in Margaret, they have selected the basket already, but the part about they can fund, that part hasn't been figured out as yet. And
so you say, but have they said what is the size of the basket in terms of the funding they're looking for? No, that's not what's in it as much as what does it cost. Was that the figure that he was given, the 185 million?
I don't know that has been detailed as yet. I'm not saying it hasn't. I don't know that it has been detailed as yet, because funding for the national health insurance is an issue. And I still ask the question, which insurance company is going to underwrite this risk? Because any insurance, if the government believes that the national health insurance can operate the same way as the NIS, with pensions and, benefits when people, maternity benefits and all of those, if they believe the national health insurance can operate in that same vein, then they have been ill-advised or they have not taken the advice they've been given. Or what I just said is not bad advice, it's bad behavior. So it's either bad advice or bad behavior, but you just cannot have health insurance without an underwriter.
But the thing with health insurance is that, as compared to, say, NS, in many instances in NS, you should really just be receiving money. The payouts on the other side should
that you would have contributed to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But with health insurance, you don't know how many people and when they're going to come forward to make a demand. And that is where the whole matter comes completely out of hand.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know, I mean, I think places like Grenada are probably going to have to look at a public-private system.
Partnership type of thing.
So for people who can afford private insurance and they want to go that way, they should be allowed to do that, which could work to the government's advantage, because these people are still taxpayers. They're just not taking advantage of that. So they will still be paying money into a system in addition to paying for their own private health care. So, that's one thing to look at.
But Margaret, let me tell you this. Part of that problem is this. Even on the question of some of these pension funds, right? I have to give Grenada credit. I saw the listing of Grenada's pension funds put out a couple of weeks ago, I think it was, the various pension funds, and at least Grenada has it laid out. I can't think of any of the other countries that I know that has it laid out like that. But having it laid out is one thing. What is the state of those pension funds?
Yeah.
Because if even you brought in a health fund insurance now, who's going to manage it? Because it should really be managed alongside the pension funds. But if the pension funds are in question, who is going to manage it? It's a serious thing.
And the other thing I'm thinking too is that if you're going to do that people are going to have to pay. Maybe you're going to have to look at a sliding scale. So, I mean, for some people who are at the very bottom, they'll probably be free. And for others, it will be a sliding scale based on income.
Yep.
You know.
And, and there are the thing I'm thinking too is that if you're going to do that people are going to have to pay. Maybe you're going to have to look at a sliding scale. So some people who are at the very bottom, they'll probably be free. And for others, it will be a sliding scale based on income. Right, so I think we're out of time.
All the time. Oh, yeah, absolutely all the time. No, George, and give us a throw, kick out.
Maybe he was looking at it.
Yeah. Well, folks, thanks once again. This has been another edition of Mek We Chat. As usual, we went all over the place, and there are a couple of issues we wanted to focus on, and one of those is that whole question of the Constitution. Let's all put our minds towards understanding what governs us. I'm Jerry George on behalf of Margaret, Beverley, Catherine, and George. Have a great rest of the week. See you again next week, God willing, for another edition of Mek We Chat. Bye.